Hello there, STEM Sharks. We are going to talk about how to actually use your sources and the information from your sources. How do you quote that in your writing? So how do you bring all of those great details, all that great knowledge, and bring it into your writing to support your thinking? So we've started our drafting, right? We've been working on our draft. And I also have set up now my reference page. So I've listed all 5 of the references that I read in order to be successful, right? In order to learn about the topic. So now that I have all this great information, I want to bring some of it into my writing to support my thinking. And so I'm going to use for the example right here, this source was super helpful for me in proving that alligators can't possibly live in the sewers of New York City, despite the urban legends. And so I have the correct citation that I used that citationmachine.net to create. So now I want to actually bring some of these details into my writing. And so I'll go to the spot. So I have this list, this page here, as a separate page also. It's not at the bottom next to my writing. It's a whole separate page here listed as references that I used. So if that's correct, then I want to drop that in her information into my writing. So I want to show you, you have several ways to do that, right? So here is the text, but I'm going to walk you through a paper handout that you'll get in class. And then there's a digital copy also for you here. So when you cite your sources in your writing, there are 2 big styles of formatting that you'll use in middle school and high school. One of them is called MLA, and that's more for the book projects that we do in citing literature. APA is more for your science and social studies papers when you're citing research. So in both of those, MLA and APA, there are 3 important components, 3 important parts that you need to grab about your source. So you need to have the title, you need to have the author, and you need to have the date that that source was published or written. A video could be created, right? So whenever it was made, you want to have that date. And then there's 2 types of ways that you can bring that information into your text. So we'll use terms like in-text citation. And so the first way is parenthetical citation. And parenthetical is a fancy way to reference parentheses. So you know what parentheses are. Don't be intimidated by the name. When you use APA format, you're going to follow that author date method of in-text citation. So this means that the author's last name and the year of publication for the source should appear in the text. So I have an example to help you out there, right? So we've got the parentheses for parenthetical citation, the author's last name, a comma, and then the date that it was published, just the year, and another set of parentheses followed by a period. So you might run into a couple of issues, right? Like, oh my goodness, what if I don't have an author for my source? That's okay. Then just use the title of the source. For instance, you'd put the parentheses, right, to start off that parenthetical citation. And then this is a shorter work, like a short video on YouTube. It's not a full-blown movie. So you use the quotes for short things like articles and maybe a film on YouTube. If it is the name of a official major motion picture, then I would put it in italics. Or if it's the name of a whole book, then I would put it in italics also, all right? So because this is a short film, I'm gonna use the parentheses, put the quotation marks, then I just type out the title, the original urban legend. I'm gonna put a comma next to separate, the comma separates the title from the date here, but I need to put those quotation marks there to let you know that I just listed the title of the source. And then there's that date and parentheses and a period. What if there's 2 authors? You got this, don't worry about it. List both names and an ampersand in between it. So you're going to do parentheses. Jones wrote this, put an ampersand. Smith helped Jones out in writing it. And then we've got a comma and the year and the parentheses. The last part is what if there's no date, right? Well, then you would still be able to list that there's no date. You don't have to type all of that out. Instead, you can just put N period, D period, and that stands for no date. So that citation, that parenthetical citation would look like this. You've got the parentheses, Jones, comma, N period, D period, that stands for no date, and then the parentheses with a period at the end. So Pretty easy, right? Not too bad. When you use this type of citation, you're going to drop that into the end of the sentence. So if you are paraphrasing something, so putting details from the original source into your words, then you could write something like 1893 in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, newspapers reported the capture of the vicious hodag. And so my source for that would be listed here. So I can even, if you hadn't read this, you'd be able to look it up on the web, right? So you'd use search terms that would be like hodag, and then I know this is the person that wrote it. That's their last name. And I know that it was written in 2018. So that's going to give me enough information that I could go ahead and look that up, right? If you quote something specifically and exactly as it appears in the written original text, then you're going to want to put those quotation marks around it. And then you're signaling to me, the reader, that you are taking this next part word for word from the source. So this is what it actually said in that source, right? Newspapers broke the story of Shepard's capture of the hodag in October of 1893. And so I put quotation marks again around whatever material I have taken directly from the source, word for word. And then the citation, the parenthetical citation, actually looks the same afterwards, right? I want to give you the author, comma, and the date that it was published. All right. So those are the basics of giving the source, the information about your source to your readers. And so if somebody needed to find that, they could look, if it's an essay, at the bottom on your reference page, or if it was published in a different format, like when you come across these things online, then you'd be able to use them to search up the sources that that writer is using. There's a second way that I would like to encourage you to practice with. So this is a little bit more advanced and can feel a little bit tricky, but it also makes your writing feel a little bit smoother, right? And a little bit more academic and fancy, if you will. So narrative APA is another form. So you can choose to do this parenthetical citation, but you can also do narrative APA citation. And that, to make sure that your writing is easy to read, you don't want to just drop the quote in your text like this. So this is a good place to start if citation is a new skill for you. This is excellent for you to learn where it goes and how to do that. But for those of you who are ready to up your game, those of you headed towards high school way, then you want to try to weave the information you want to quote into your writing with a signal phrase, is what it's called. So a signal phrase is a group of words that introduce the information to your readers in a smooth way. And it gives your source to your audience without having to put it into parentheses at the end of the sentence. Whatever signal phrase you choose should help the readers understand how the details connect to your writing and to your ideas. So a couple of ways that you can practice with that is you could reference the type of source. So I could start my sentence by saying the video, the original urban legend, and then I would put the publishing date right after that. And then I could use the word explains, right? So this video explains, and then I can put my quote in here. So that the ... there is just that keeps going, right? Or I could maybe try the article. And then again, I've got the quotation marks around the title of that article. I put the whole article in there. And then I have by Cynthia Raysor, and I put the date right after her name. And then I used the word suggests, and then I dropped the quote in after that, right? So now I'm starting to blend my, whatever it is I'm trying to quote, the information that I want to include in my writing, I can blend that in, and the citation actually just blends right in with my writing, makes it smoother. I can also reference the author. So I could start off here, and so instead of dropping in the type of source, I could just say Matthew Hudson, and I would put his, or the year of publication in parentheses right after his name. Emphasizes that urban legends, right? So this is the part that I'm taking word for word from the source, but I'm using some of my language and my ideas and thinking to connect his quoted material into my writing. I could do the same thing here. There's Keith again. Keith Ulig, 2018, observes, and then I've got that quoted material. All right. The last way that you could do it is you could try to do the type of source and the author. So this is Emily Zarka, PhD, and in 2019, she illustrates in her video series Monstrum, and then there's the quote. So you'll notice that when I put this introductory phrase, right, so I've got this signal phrase at the start. If I do the video and then list it, the date and the verb, there's a comma right here before that quoted material. And you'll notice that happens after every single one of these verbs here, except when I use the word that. And so if you're using other language after the verb to blend the quoted material into your sentence, then you don't need the comma. But if you're going to just use the signal verb right here, please make sure you use a comma, a space, and then go ahead and quote your material. Right? Down here, it listed the title because I've got some verbiage up here. And so I'm introducing the next part of that sentence. It starts with the beginning of the sentence there. And so I'm going to capitalize that letter, unlike quoting mid-sentence up here. All right, so if you have questions with that, it's a little bit tricky to practice with. I'm more than happy to meet with you individually. Just let me know. But that's how you can reference this sheet. And then there's some common signal verbs. So I gave you a whole list here of fancy signal verbs for you to practice with and challenge yourself in your writing. So I want to show you what that looked like in my own paragraph here. So this is my topic sentence. You'll notice I've got a good transition linking to the paragraph right above this. And so regardless of the version, the explanations of how the reptiles got into the sewers and how they survived down there are unclear and scientifically unreasonable. So the rest of my paragraph should explain how they got into the sewers, right? But also why it is scientifically unreasonable that they could survive down there. All right, I'm going to use the source that I had here, this debunking urban legends. I'm going to use the information from my annotations there in order to support my thinking. All right. The vast majority then, so I'll jump right back into that paragraph, the vast majority of incidents where alligators are found on the loose can be traced back to abandoned pets. It is possible to buy a pet alligator even through the mail. But when they grow too big to take care of, people just turn them loose. That might explain how they end up in the streets and rivers, but they would die if they are not rescued and put into zoos or animal sanctuaries. The claim that alligators could survive and even reproduce in the sewers has been proven false in multiple sources. And I'm about to show you which ones, right? So I used the narrative style of citing here. So you can see I used the author's name and then shares in her article, and I list the title of the author there. I've got a little comma right here. And then I've got the parentheses of 2017, which is when that was published. So I'm trying to go through and blend, and then I will put my quoted material right after that. So I took the alligators are native to the warm tropical climate, and I have my quotation at the end. So the words taken from the source directly are this: alligators are native to the warm tropical climate. And so I want to go back and show you alligators are native to the warm tropical climate. And so that's the beginning of the sentence. And when I bring it in the original source, when I bring it into mine, right, I want to put the quotation marks around it so that I'm showing and signaling to you that yes, indeed, this is from another source. These aren't my words, but I'm trying to blend it into my writing as well, right? So let's see how that flows a little bit better than just dropping in the quote, alligators are native to the warm tropical climate, and putting Levine's name and the date right after it, right? So Jennifer Levine shares in her article, Debunking Urban Legends Using Science, and that was in 2017, so Jennifer is sharing in her article that alligators are native to the warm tropical climate. So the animals would never last in the cold northern winters and the even lower temps deep below the surface. So this last part is me explaining why that quote is important. How does it connect to my thinking of it being scientifically impossible for them to live down there, right? Once you reference the author, so right here, Jennifer Levine, then I know as a reader that you're using that same source. So all I would have to do here is just say Levine also explains. And then here's a spot where I paraphrased from her writing. So Levine also explains, and let's take a look before we read mine. So she explains that alligators, it turns out, can't digest their food when they're cold, so they simply don't eat. And without the sun, their vitamin D produces when in the sun. They also wouldn't be able to utilize calcium and their bones would get soft. So she explains this here. So what I took into my writing is here. Levine also explains, so I'm paraphrasing, right? These are my words, that the cold causes their digestive systems to shut down, making any food they might find unusable to the gators. All right. I have my source cited there also. So if anybody questioned my scientific understanding there, I could point them in the direction of my source. All right, the last one I want to show you is in the next sentence. I added a quote again, and I have parenthetical citation. So here we are right at the end. You can see that. So I have finally, and then this is quoted directly from that source I just showed you. Finally, the polluted sewer water, rife with things like salmonella, Shigella, and E. coli, would kill them after only a few months. And so I have her last name listed there. I have a comma, and then the date that it was published. And then the sentence right after this helps to bring it all back together. I'm explaining why all that quoted information was so important. Therefore, to put a stop to the hyperbolic storytelling, that's a vocab word, if the freezing temperatures don't kill the abandoned alligator pets, the toxic sewer water will. All right, so that's how you do it. You can go ahead and use the parenthetical citation in the last part after your sentence, at the end of your sentence, excuse me. Or, let me clear that out because it's covering it up. Sorry about that, guys. Or you can go ahead and put the narrative version where you narrate or explain, tell the story of the author, maybe the title of their work, and the year that it was published. And you can put that at the beginning of the sentence and use a strong verb here, right, from our list to help connect the name of that source within your writing. All right, again, ask if you have any questions. This is great stuff for you to be working on, but it is not easy, right? So ask when you need help because that's our job, is to be here to help you. I can't wait to work with you on this and help you become expert citers of information in your writing. Thanks for listening.